Firstly, you need to remove your shock from your frame. Now when you do this, make sure you don't lose any of the nuts, bolts, spacers or flip chips that may become loose when you take that shock off. It's also worth taking note of the order of things, as you'll have to put everything back on in the same order when you come to refit that shock. Now the next step isn't always required. If your shock hardware at the bottom end of the shock, at the opposite end to the damper, is above 30mm wide, you'll need to remove it, as it can stop the spring sliding off the end of the shock. Now this hardware is usually pushed in really tight. It can be tapped out if you're really careful, but there are specialist tools out there to make your life a little bit easier. Once that's been done, you need to undo the preload adjuster all the way to the top of the threads. Next, slide your spring up to the top end of the shock. That should create some room down here for this plate to slide up and off the end of the shock. The spring should then slide straight off the end. Installing a spring is just as easy as taking one off. First, make sure your preload adjuster is all the way up to the top of the threads. Grab that spring, slide it all the way up to that adjuster. Your end plate will then have enough room to slide on the end, and that should sit flush with the end of the shock. Pull the spring down to it, and then tighten up that preload adjuster until it hits the spring. Once the adjuster has hit the spring, on this Rock Shox shock, it recommends doing a minimum of 2 complete turns, just to keep everything nice and snug in place. Now this will vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. Once you've done that, you need to reinstall your hardware if you took it off. Next, refit your shock to your frame, remembering any spacers or flip chips you had on before. Tighten up to the correct setting and you are good to go.